welcome everyone to today's session. It's presented by Randy McNeely. Now, Randy and I have been working together a lot over the last year or so, and Randy's going on this journey with his Chief Kindness Officer business and the positive the power. Sorry, what's PEACOCK stand for? Positive.
PEACOCK stands for positive engagement and economic power of kindness.
That's the updated version. What he loves to do is he likes to help people have a direct impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, around the positive economic power of kindness. And, he's got a lot to share today, and a lot of it involves around leadership. And, I guess we all know to be kind, but what Randy's going to share with us today is some of his tips about how to actually do that in a constructive way. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that introduction there?
No, I think you did a great job. I mean, I'm going to talk about 3 different questions and how we respond to those questions, and give you guys an opportunity to respond, et cetera, and chime in. So this is going to be an interactive session. I mean, I've got some slides that I've prepared, but by no means do we have to stick to them like glue. So,
and you've also written a book, and you're just about to launch a second book. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've written 2 books. I wrote one book called The Kindness Giver's Formula, which is an easy read. It's about 45 minutes and gives some real practical. It gives a simple 4-step formula for ingraining a daily intentional habit of kindness giving, and then some practical guidance for implementing the formula, and shares some great stories about the formula in action. And then I just completed my second book, The Daily Dose of Positive. It's 90 days of I can't remember my own title. Timeless Nuggets to Enhance Your Life. So it's just basically positive quotes and some questions to get you thinking about what those quotes mean to you. So
awesome. And you've also got a podcast.
I do. I have the Kindness and Happiness Connection podcast, and we're going to be next week kicking off the first episode of season 2. So. And it's focusing on promoting the kindness and happiness connection to well-being in personal and professional lives. So,
as far as being an expert around this, kindness, the positive economic power of kindness, you're certainly an expert at it with all this literature and things that people can learn from. I've already been asked, where do we get information like this from, all your stuff? And what we'll do is in the show notes, we'll include links to your podcast, links to your books and things like that. So we'll put that all in the show notes. So,
yep.
In the replay when that goes live in about a week or so's time. All right, Randy, mate. Well, it's over to you. That's the introduction, mate. It's so good to have you here. I'm looking forward to this. We all want to be kind. We all want to have more happiness around us. So off to you, mate. Share your tips.
I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go into full mode here. Let's see, can you guys all see that okay? Of course, there's my, what we're going to be talking about, how kindness leadership drives personal and professional prosperity. And just jump right into it. We'll cover 3 questions that have to do with behaviors, habits, and impact. We'll also talk about the advantages and the benefits of implementing kindness behaviors, personally and professionally. And we've all, there's 3 questions. Here's the first one. I'm going to ask, why are kindness behaviors vital to leadership success today? You think about it, I want to ask you a question. Why do people that are building a building pour cement as a foundation before they start building? Any thoughts? Anybody want to chime in?
Well, without a solid foundation, the ground underneath is going to be weaker, and the taller and the heavier the building, the more likely it is to fall over.
Exactly. If I try to go build a house and I start framing it and everything before I've laid the foundation, the chances of that house standing after I'm done are like next to nothing. And you think about kindness behaviors are to culture and are to organizations like cement is to foundations for buildings. And we're going to talk a little bit about, there's a positive economic power that comes when you lay that foundation. Now, we all hear about economic power. What's the first thing you think about when you hear the terms economic and power together?
Money.
Strong financial position.
What's that?
You're in a strong financial position.
Strong financial position. Think about money. Think about, prosperity and those things like that. When you hear about positive economic power, there's a certain there's a path that we take to get there. And if you've got positive economic power, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a second, but there's also what I call negative economic power. Positive economic power is something that flows on a regular basis and can grow to a point where it's perpetual. And what I mean by that is the power that comes from building strong relationships. We're going to get more into that. There's a negative economic power too. There's organizations out there that have a lot of power money-wise, but they see people in a different way. When you're looking from a positive economic power perspective, you see people as human beings. You see them as a solid part of the organization. When I'm talking about negative economic power, there's organizations that have strong economic power, but they see their people as warm backsides in a chair, and they end up having a lot of turnover, right? They have people that leave, and what kind of loyalty do they have? That people are constantly churning. There's constant division inside the organization. But if we want to gain or establish positive economic power, that leads into, then we've got to have positive engagement power. And that precedes positive economic power. So if you're going to engage positively, there's two different ways of looking at this. You have two groups of clients whenever you're an organization. That's my perspective. What do you, when I say that, when I say organizations have two groups of clients, what does that make you think of? What are your thoughts? Any ideas?
Internal and external.
Exactly. You have your internal clients and you have your external clients. And if you take good care of your internal clients, they're going to take good care of your external clients. And so what are some of the things that you think, what are some of the actions, the things that we can do to take good care of our internal clients?
Engage openly and let people be vulnerable in the workplace.
Very good. Engage openly, let people be vulnerable. Any other thoughts?
Getting their buy-in, I think, is really, really valuable, so that it's not kind of just something that's imposed from on high.
So people actually have a voice and they can share their ideas, and if you present something, they can give you their feedback, their thoughts about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you're creating a safe space for them to contribute and to say, well, I think this could be better.
So what we're talking about here is establishing relationships with the people internal, right? So when you establish those solid relationships, you establish a connection. I like to call this a step success. If you want to build a relationship, a strong relationship with the people internal, then you have to connect to their hearts. Way to connect to their hearts: treat them with respect. You give them a voice, like Anthony's just said. You allow them to speak. You allow them to give feedback. You allow them to feel like they matter, like they're important. And you remember we all remember when we come to the door of the office, or when we come into work, it's something that I like to ask people: is there any kind of magical box there? Is there a magical box there that says, dump your human needs here? How many organizations do you know that have one of those boxes? None of them. None of them do. And yet, too often, and we all know this, when you come inside an organization, a lot of times you're treated almost as if, once you've crossed that threshold, you're an automaton. and you don't have those human needs have gone away somehow. And the reality is, we all know, inside the organization, every one of us has the same human needs. Doesn't matter if you're the CEO or the janitor, you have the same human needs. And so when you treat people like they're humans, and you can build that connection. Kindness, treat them with kindness behaviors, such as showing respect, giving them a voice, and other things like that. Then you build that connection, which builds trustworthy relationships, which leads to success. And of course, this is also totally applicable to your external clients, right? And what happens when we treat our internal clients right? How do they treat our external clients?
Better.
They take good care of them. When they, if you feel, you think about this, if you feel like you're working for a great place, or, and this is applicable to person, when we, excuse me, it's applicable individually as well. When you treat people right and you take good care of them, and they have an opportunity to talk about either you as a person or they talk about your organization, what are they going to say? They're going to say good things, right? And so what ends up happening is those people become an extension of your marketing program. They become free marketing for you. I have a perfect example. I moved to Colorado. I didn't have a mechanic, and I'm very skeptical here in the States. I've been, unfortunately, it's an unfortunate statement to make, but I've been ripped off too many times by unscrupulous mechanics. And so I'm very picky about who I'll take my car to. So I always like to ask around, ask people that I know or and have come to trust. Okay, who's a good mechanic to go to? I moved to Colorado. One of the ladies that I got to know that I worked with, super nice lady, and she was very helpful. And she says, "Hey, do you have a mechanic?" And I says, "Well, no. Do you have anybody you can recommend?" And she gave me the name of this guy named Eddie. I don't remember Eddie's last name. I can still see his face in my mind. I can still hear his voice in my head. But Eddie was as honest as the day is long, and he did a great job. And I probably refer in the 5 years that I was there, 6 years, I'll bet I referred over 100 people to him, at least. And why did I do that? Because he always took good care of me. I came in, I can't remember, I can't count the number of times I came in thinking I had these massive problems with my car. And he came back to me and said, "No, you don't have that problem. You only got this or this going on. I mean, I could fix this. I could do what you said, but it'll cost you this much money and you don't need to do that." Anyway, so build that strong connection internally and externally. Second question, how can ingraining behaviors in your individual leadership style pave the way for powerful positive impact with both internal and external clients? So I just went through a lot of that, but what's the process for ingraining any behaviors in us inside in our lives? If we want to ingrain a behavior, what do we need to do?
You have to form a habit.
Form a habit. Before you form the habit, what do you have to identify?
What behaviors need to change and improve?
Yeah, identify the behaviors that you want to have, right? If I want to be a good listener. I want to be better at showing respect to people. I want to be a good communicator. I want to, whatever behavior it is, we identify those behaviors, and then, like Pete said, you know, and there's I don't know if you guys can see that or not. The letters are pretty small, but there's a whole load of behaviors that are encompassed by the circle of kindness. Act with confidence, and that's kindness to self. Be agreeable, give praise, smile, be forgiving, show gratitude. All these different things we can identify, but then we have to do the work. And that's established habits, like Pete said, make behaviors permanent. So it takes practice. It takes practice over and over and over again to ingrain those things into our lives. Just like is anybody here play an instrument?
I used to many years ago, like in my teenage years. I actually used to play the oboe.
And so when you play the oboe, could you just pick it up and play it like you did after you practiced all the years that you practiced?
No, I sounded like a cat being strangled. It was terrible. I tried picking it up a couple of years ago. And in the end, I gave it to my nephew. But yeah, I picked it up, and because it's a wind instrument, right? So it's got the reeds and everything, and you've got the muscles and the lips have gone. But oh, it sounded terrible. It was awful. Yeah.
And so if you play it now, you know, without having practiced for all those years, yeah, it sounds like a lovesick moose that's being strangled, or the cat, like you said.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
In order to be able to keep up that ability, you have to continually practice, right?
Yeah.
What happens with behaviors that we want to have in our lives if we stop practicing them? Like anything, you don't use it, you lose it, right? And so the established habits make behavior permanent. So it's continually practicing over and over, giving kindness, keeping commitments, listening attentively, being patient. If you want to develop a new habit, coming up with rituals to ingrain that habit. Things that you're going to do. If I want to be a good listener, okay, I want to improve my listening. Anthony's talking to me, and I have a challenge with always thinking of the next answer while Anthony's talking to me. Nobody here ever does that, right? Nobody else ever does it. Well, if I do that, then I'm going to have a challenge being able to understand what Anthony's trying to tell me. So rather than do that, I have to sit and listen and then reflect that, okay, Anthony, you just said this, this, and this. Did I understand correctly? Did I catch what you said? Does that make sense? So Anthony, that's...
Randy, have you finished? It's my turn now. Come on.
Oh, what? What did you say?
I said, have you finished? It's my turn now. I was interrupting.
Anyway, so I don't need to beat that horse to death, but how can ingraining kindness behaviors in your organizational culture have a compelling positive impact on your overall business prosperity? I'm not talking about anything new. We've all heard the term win-win, you know, creating a win-win environment, creating a situation where people want to keep coming back to you. They know you, like you, and trust you. So here's some things, good things that happen when we ingrain those kind of behaviors in our lives, in our organization. We have increased connection with people. When people know you, like you, and trust you, they want to work with you, right? Mm. When you have increased connection, that leads to buy-in, like you said earlier, Anthony. By the way, do you guys have any questions or comments? Is this making sense? I'm not saying anything super out of the ordinary, super difficult to understand, right? This is all common sense. This is stuff that we've heard before. But the interesting thing is if they ask people, a lot of times they ask leaders, okay, how important is culture? How important is our kindness behaviors to establishing a good culture? And they'll say, oh, they're vital. They're vital. Okay. And then ask the next question. Okay. What's your strategy? Do you have a strategy plan? How is that worked into your strategy plan? Where does it talk about how you're going to establish those kindness behaviors to create or to maintain a good culture? And they'll be like, well, that's not written in the strategy plan. So wait a minute, you just told me it's vital, but it's not part of the strategy plan. That's part of when you make it part of the strategy plan, that's where you get cause buy-in, because you understand if you're going to have people be loyal to you, part of the challenge of having people be loyal or being able to get loyal customers or clients or anything like that is helping them to feel like what they're doing, what they're working with you is making a difference. It's having an impact, a positive impact. Does that make any sense? That's where you get the cause buy-in. Then you get inside an organization, when you have the cause buy-in, you have increased workforce loyalty, less turnover, unleashed creativity and innovation, increased productivity, better customer care, like we already discussed, increased customer loyalty. Remember how I talked about earlier about how you can have your employees be an extension of your marketing department? Well, what happens when you have great customers love you? They become an extension of your marketing department. They're happy to talk about you. Man, that Professor Pete, he is such an awesome guy. I love talking to him. He's the greatest de-stressor on the planet, you know, just working with him. Rob Bellingham has the greatest little app for helping healthcare people make a difference. I would love to tell you about that. I heard that you're looking for this. Rob is the guy. Or, you know, Scotty Schindler with his System 1357, man, he knocks it out of the park, teaching you how to do business judo, teaching you acronyms you never thought of before with FAB and and other stuff, and business judo and all these different things. You could keep going. You have expanded market reach because of that, customer and employee loyalty, and then increased opportunities. All of these things funnel towards something. They funnel towards continuous kindness-driven bottom line increases. You establish perpetual bottom line increases. Now, do I say that, does that mean that you're never going to have challenges? No. But what happens, just like in COVID, as we built relationships here with this group, what has ended up happening? If you had a challenge, or if you had something you're thinking about, oh, hey, I know so-and-so, I can talk to Anthony about YouTube videos. I can talk to Pete, and man, Pete, I am stressing out every day about these things. Rob, I'm not quite sure what I can do with your app, right? But you know what I'm saying? You can, if I know somebody who has a need, I can refer people. Why is that? Because I build up connections, people that know me, like me, and trust me, feel good about what I'm doing. You build up connections. We build up connections here, and that can lead directly to opportunities that are gonna help us grow, not only personally but professionally, and help us prosper. And whether we get a direct sale now or a direct business opportunity now, whether we do or not, we're preparing for opportunities that will come, if that makes sense. Is that, any thoughts, any questions, any comments on that?
I like the idea of the, like you said, that sort of perpetual, almost right. The thing that I was thinking of was that perpetual motion, because I know for me that one of my big experiences, as I've sort of just been growing up, wow, I'm getting older now, but it's just sort of going through business. I've worked for a couple of companies who had a huge amount of potential, but they wasted so much time in trying to get that first sale, but they'd then never do anything to keep the repeat customers. And that's a big thing for me is that idea of having repeat business. And like you said, it's this kindness driven approach and that perpetual engine almost, right? So then once you build that kindness, you've got that loyalty, like you said, right? People want to come to you. It kind of feels like it that's why I sort of, maybe I'm a little hung up on that perpetual motion idea that you've kind of got, because it just kind of, it's like a cycle. It keeps feeding itself.
It is. It's like a cycle. It feeds itself. You keep treating your people right. They treat your customers right. Keep coming back. They bring new opportunities. All right. So down to the nitty gritty, 625, 3 takeaways. Kindness behaviors are to culture what nails and screws are to buildings, or what cement is to buildings. The path to ingraining kindness behaviors is practice, practice, practice. If you want to become a concert pianist, they say 10,000 hours. Now, if you want to establish solid habits that last, there are things you have to keep practicing over and over and over again. And then, the final takeaway, ingraining kindness behaviors leads to a flow of positive economic power that will perpetuate itself over time. Scotty with ReNet. How did you have the success you had with ReNet, Scotty? I mean, over time, why did people keep coming back to you? Why did they stay with you?
It's interesting you asked that, Randy, because you're absolutely right. The business got to a stage where obviously their clients were really critical. But when it comes to business leadership internally, I saw my clients really as my staff, not the end clients. So every day I went to work for only one job, which was to keep my staff happy, because they're the people that kept my clients happy. Yep. Did I keep clients happy? Sure. And whether it was through kindness or whatever, but everything you spoke about is actually true. So every day when I went to work, all I did was make sure my staff were happy, they were trained up, they had a pathway, they were a part of the organisation, and that then followed down to all the clients at the end of the day. So it's interesting you ask that question, because that's, in the end, your clients, you go through a transition from your clients being the people you're selling to actually you're just spending all day selling to your staff so they can pass it on to your clients.
Exactly.
Transition.
And you establish the positive economic power of kindness cycle, and it just goes.
And if something went wrong with the staff, because they make mistakes too, it was more important that I retained and looked after the staff member and taught them what to do next time than it was to tell the client they did the wrong thing or something external was right rather than the staff member. So even if they made a mistake, it was always about building that staff member up.
Well, and the interesting thing is when you practice blameless, when you practice blamelessness, meaning, yeah, okay, I'm your staff member, I messed up. But instead of pounding on them, saying, okay, how did we get here? What happened? And how are we going to fix it? And like you just said, we recognize people are going to make mistakes, but when you give them a chance to rectify their mistake, to recognize, okay, I made this mistake, here's what happened, here's how we're going to fix it so it won't happen again. That gives them confidence and says that you have enough trust and faith in them to enable them to make mistakes with that, and they can trust coming back to you and feel like they're not going to get beat senseless for it.
Yeah, because at Renit, I'd sooner know what was going on and have someone tell me something's gone wrong than put it under the carpet and I'll find about it later when it's much worse.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, right? That you build that trust with them, and then they trust you to say they know that if they have a problem, they can come to you and say, hey, Scotty, I messed up on this.
Well, no one ever said that to me though, Randy. They always said, hey, this is what's happened, what should we do? So no one ever said I made a mistake. Most people said, look, this has happened, and I never saw things as mistakes. I just saw it as experience. So whether that was deliberate or an accident, but nothing was ever called mistakes, even from server outages. I mean, we just went, let's deal with it, let's sort it out, and let's move on.
Oh, that's great. So that's awesome. That's a perfect example.
Randy, one other thing that, what you're talking about the trust and everything and how that really moves things along. I've been reading a book called Speed of Trust.
Oh,
and
man.
Have you read that?
Oh yeah. Love that book.
Yeah. And it really, for everybody else, it really talks about how trust plays a key component in being able to really get things done so quickly and so efficiently. And just the opposite is true as well, that if the trust is minimal, it's like a tax on your business, and you're going to be paying that in either in revenues or in time, whatever it happens to be. So
exactly. And you see this line right here: trustworthy relationships are the keystone of success.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, I love that book because it talks about how you can make deposits in the trust bank, right? Through the things that we do. The challenge is, we can spend a lot of time building up and making deposits in the trust bank, and then we can quickly withdraw. So that's why, coming back to the end here, to this, the kindness behaviors, that's why they're so vital. They're the things, that's what holds the organization together. That's what enables an organization to be successful, because that's what establishes the culture. It's like culture, people think that if they've written their mission, vision, and values, that established the culture. And I would argue till the cows come home that's a good, I'm sorry, let me figure out how to mute this stupid thing. There we go. Okay. This wonderful thing. I love my phone. That wasn't very kind. I was not being kind to my phone. No, but and I just totally lost my train of thought.
Hey, Randy,
Yeah.
we're coming up to 30, so we'll wrap up for those that need to go. Can you give one solid tip about the positive economic power of kindness as we wrap up? And I've got a couple of questions I do want to ask, and we'll open up the audience for asking questions. But for those that need to go, one sort of statement, one positive statement that describes the positive economic power of kindness?
Positive engagement precedes positive economic power of kindness. And when you engage in positive behaviors and take good care of your people, they'll take good care of your clients who will take good care of you. And your positive economic power will continuously flow.
Well, that's excellent. So for those that need to go, by all means, I do have some questions that I want to ask. So we're going to hang around for a few more minutes and do a bit of networking and a bit more Q&A. But before I ask any questions, anyone else got any questions they want to ask Randy? You want to take off your screen sharing too, Randy, or do you want to leave it on?
Let's take it off.
I've got a question, if you don't mind.
Go for it, Jeff.
So, the word kindness, it's differentiated from niceness, correct?
It is. It is. And so you're asking how or why or?
Well, one of my mentors early on was a very kind man, because he always told me straight exactly what was going on. There were times when he wasn't very nice about it, but he was very kind in that he never withheld his opinion and his guidance. And sometimes I think there's a misunderstanding when people discuss kindness in the workplace, that it means that you're sort of the sugar plum fairy walking around smiling all the time, even though things are falling off the table. It's not really true.
Well, exactly. That couldn't be farther from the truth, right? Because if you're going to be kind, I mean, kindness doesn't mean that you're wishy-washy, squishy, squashy. What it does mean is that you treat people with respect, and that when something needs to be said, you say it, you set clear expectations, you say what needs to be said, but then you don't beat people over the head with it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it falls in line with what I kind of interpreted your presentation to be about as well. And the other thing that I would just add as a comment, Scotty knows this. I grew up in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And because I grew up in Hawaii, I was faced with multiple cultures, people from all across the Pacific Rim.
The melting pot.
Well, yeah, kind of the mixed plate there. And the thing about that is kindness is defined differently in different cultures.
Yeah.
So, what's kind to someone from Fiji is not necessarily kind to the person who's from California. And so I had to do a lot of asking questions like, well, how do you want me to be your manager and your guide? What works best for you?
That makes sense, asking those kind of questions, because you have to understand where they're coming from in order to be able to relate, right?
Yeah. Well, this is great. This is a great workshop. Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm in an interesting position right now. I have a potential client in Dubai. There's 2,200 people in that organization that I'm working with. And I had to ask the lady that I've been interacting with. I said, okay, I know that there are specific things that are cultural things for the United States. I just said straight up, there may be some nuances, some things that are cultural norms for Dubai, for the United Arab Emirates, that are not the same for the United States. And so in order to be able to implement the Culture-Wise program, which is what I'm working on her with properly there, I'm going to need to have a solid understanding of those nuances, if there are any, so that, I'm not coming across as a jerk when I'm not intending to be. So it's appreciate that question. I appreciate you bringing that up, Jeff. Anybody else?
Hey, Randy, I just looked up the word kind, like where it's from originally, and it's the same word as kin. like family. We're together, and so so even talking the same language as the people in Dubai, or is well, in a family you're speaking the same language, but the word actually means to produce, like a family does. It propagates for forever, and then we can do that even economically through kindness.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I got one. Do you think people get confused with kindness and business, as in they're sometimes too kind in business that they're not actually making any money? They're spending a lot of time being kind and social and likable, as opposed to going out and creating a business. Where do you see the difference between just being kind all the time and actually having a business?
I think there's a big difference. The sense is, yeah, you can be kind all the time and go out and do nice things, which is helpful to build up. Say, hey, he's the nicest guy on the planet. But when you're in business, and so you take care of those things. You establish the habits, establish the behaviors, and the things that are conducive to a great atmosphere within the organization, but also that are empowering to conduct the business that you need to conduct. And say, listen, we're in the business of real estate sales or real estate software. Well, these are the things we need to do, and this is how we do it. These are the behaviors we emulate and project when we're doing it. But we are in business, and we're in the business of helping people. I think there's a big challenge with organizations that I've worked with is focusing too much on numbers. Remembering when you treat people right inside the business and outside, the numbers will come. Not that you don't need the numbers. You need to know what your goals are. And you know this, Scotty. I mean, you've talked to me. I believe you need to know what finances you're working towards and things like that. But if you know what your goal is, you know what the things that you need to do to be able to be successful to reach that goal, but you see that you act through the lens of kindness in doing it. Did I answer that? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, sure. And because a lot of people, I think, they spend a lot of time, like I said, being kind and giving stuff away, but that's not a business.
No.
So there's a distinction, right? And it's fine to do, some things with intent, but I just wanted to make sure there was a bit of clarity. So if you're a solopreneur, a small business owner, if you're not if you're not in a charity business, you're in a real business that needs to pay wages or support your family. Well, then you've got to have that sort of, you've got to have that intent about what you do every day as well. And it's not kind if you go broke. It's actually not a good story.
It's not kind to be living on poverty lane.
It's not kind. It's not kind to you. So, but it doesn't mean. I just want to sort of get your thoughts on that distinction. So, as a solopreneur, you really still got to have that business intent. But you can be kind and make money by making sure you deliver what you promise, by under promising, over delivering. You can do all sorts of things to be kind in business, but still get paid for it. And there's there's an ability to do that.
Exactly. It's like with the CultureWise program. It's a kind program. It really is. It's establishing solid behaviors, inviting organizations to establish solid behaviors. But it's got the intent of making money.
Jeff said it pretty well. I can't remember Jeff's line. The difference between kindness and, what do you say? Kindness and niceness. So some people are scared to maybe correct things or sort things out because they just got to smile and say it's okay. But if there's no, kindness for me is also teaching the lesson and learning from it, but we all move on with something better than we had before. So whatever the situation is, whether it be good situations like someone's done something really well, or a negative situation where something's gone wrong. So there is a difference. Some people just be really nice, and some people can be kind. But I think the kindness part of it, it's. I think people get scared if they're going to teach someone something, or think about your kids. Sometimes you've got to reprimand the kids, right? Sometimes they've done something wrong. Well, how do you do that and be kind and not be cranky? It's not easy to do, but if you've all learned from it, you get over it and move on, well, then it's all good. So
And that's the thing. I mean, there's times when you have to have tough love. You have to say something that needs to be said, but
that's
then
fine.
after say, hey, you know, I still love you. I care about you. I needed to say this because you need to understand, you know, you do X, Y, Z, and then this is going to be the consequences. And so
That's what I meant by being kind. You know, there's
yeah.
it's that
It's
tough
not
love is the word I was looking for. So you answered it for me perfectly. It's that tough love is still kind.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's like Jeff said, you can't, it's really not being kind when you're nice and don't say, when you think you're being nice and by not saying something to somebody, in reality, you're doing them a disservice. If you can see something that needs to change, you can come up with a way that is empathetic and kind to say it, but still say it because it needs to be said.
Yeah.
Well, let me,
Anyone else got thoughts?
if I could just jump in for a second. Part of the issue of making the distinction for me between kindness and niceness is I usually end up cursing at my steering wheel on the drive home. I mean,
None of us have ever done that. Why do you do that, Jeff?
well, it gives me a little clarity on what the discussion should be like the next day if I get it out of my system on the drive home.
Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, you know, at the time that I find out something is going on, if I don't have enough self-control, if I don't schedule my interaction and my feedback well, I am not going to be kind or nice. And so a lot of times it's just a matter of saying, no, let me sleep on that. And then tomorrow, let's talk about it. Because I always have a much more settled way of discussing an issue that isn't pleasant the following day, as opposed to right then and there in my office.
Right.
You know, and Scotty will appreciate this. I learned that from a surfing buddy of mine. This guy and I used to go out every weekend, rain or shine, waves or not, and we would flop around in the water. And I asked him once why we did that religiously. And he said, all week long, my head is like a jar filled with water and sand and dirt and pebbles. And it's agitated all the time. And when I'm out here in the water for the 2 or 3 hours, it's like leaving the jar on the beach. And when I come back, it's all settled into its proper place. I can't be effective during the week without this 2 hours of flopping around in the water. And I've had to cut it down to cursing my steering wheel on the drive home, you know. So usually what happens is by the time the next day rolls around, the person that's raised the issue or has made an error will come in and we'll dispense immediately with the fault finding and we'll say, well, what can we do to fix it?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We all know that if something has happened and we're upset about something, we know what happens when we respond immediately because we have a tendency to respond in anger, right? I wish I could say I'd never done that. Of course, I never have, but yeah. But no, we have a tendency to respond in anger. If we can take some time and walk away, step away from the situation, go curse at the steering wheel if we need to, or whatever it is we need to do. You know, we all know that when we can come back after we've had some time to cool off and to think about it, then we're generally able to work through things a lot better, aren't we?
Well, that's an excellent session. I mean, we all know about kindness. We all know about niceness, which is another word that got introduced today from Jeff. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, we all know, but it's nice for you to put it into like 3 questions and a summary. And just, you know, I guess we also all need those reminders and that practice, as you called it, you know, staying at the pointy end of knowledge. So that was excellent, Randy. So in wrapping up, what have we been now? Yeah, 45 minutes. We'll start to wrap up. Anyone else got any other quick question? Or Randy, you've got one more statement to make and then we'll wrap it up.
I think I've stated what I need to. Does anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah, excellent. If no one else has got any thoughts, raise your hand if you do. One more. Yeah, go for it, Paul.
Just a real quick one. For me, it comes back to, right, things that you said before, Randy, right, that it's treating people with respect, treating people right. And so there's the internal and external. And like I say, if you've got those good behaviors, if you as a leader, if you're practicing those, then others are going to see that it's worth doing, that they'll follow suit. And so very much I can see that kindness, and I've seen it in practice. So yeah, I do. I think like you said, it comes down to that respect. And for me, respect also helps differentiate a little bit between the kindness and the niceness. And then when you're looking at the business side of stuff, you can still be kind, but you're doing it right from that respectful standpoint. So some of those other conversations, right? Like when do you switch, right? Move a client away to somebody else? Maybe that's being kind to them. That's right. That's an act of kindness as well. So there's lots of different contexts to it. But I really do like that perpetual. That's the thing I'm coming back to is that perpetual motion thing.
I'm going to have to. I'll send another graphic. I didn't put it in here, but I've got an economics of kindness cycle that I can
put it in the show notes. So because we can go for hours and hours. I know every session we do. In fact, talking about sessions, we've got some more good ones coming up. I've got some more good ones booking in at the moment too. So there's some other sessions coming up now through March and everything's starting to get into April. We've got another live session booked live from Luxembourg, and we've got another one from South Africa through the UK time zone that's just being booked in, as well as more for the US and Australia time zone. So the workshops at the moment we're starting to fill up, and there's content for everybody. I'm not sure, the one next week, is that yours, Linda, next week? Or is it the week after?
Linda's in 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks. I can't remember which one's next week. But anyway, there's
Yeah,
more.
I'm in March.
You're in March. Go and check out what's coming up. Look at the other.
Yeah, I think mine might be next week, Scotty, on YouTube.
Yours is next week.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
So there's plenty coming up, and every person that goes to it says, wow, there's a lot of good stuff in here, and that's actually correct. So there's a lot of good stuff to learn at the moment. So, but yeah, thanks everyone for coming. We'll wrap up on that. But Randy, a great session. Really appreciate you being there, and good to see everyone on today. And the recording of it will probably be out in a week or so's time. It does take me a little while to drop it down, do the editing, and put it up. So a very good session, everyone. So we'll see you all on the other side. Any other final thoughts, Randy?
No, I think that's it. Do you want to stay on for just a second, Scotty, or do you?
We can do that if you like. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Perfect. Hey, thanks.
See
Thanks.
ya. Bye.
Sure appreciate you.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.